We shall begin in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right, welcome to another installment of the Fragments of Silicon review. First up is a game called Get Even. Uh, Bear in mind, we might have to cut the footage we're showing right now because, well, we did an interview about this game just on Wednesday, and it was giving us some technical problems.
Yeah.
For reasons which make sense if you've played the game on anything other than a really high-end computer.
Even then, several of us are within the recommended, the recommended specs of this game, and there's no getting around it. It's just unoptimized to hell. This game, the game, it's not a deal breaker necessarily, but I can't say it runs all that smoothly because when you get right down to it, it's a resource hog.
Yeah, and that's all the way down from the install file size all the way to how it runs.
Right, because mentioned this on Wednesday, this game is pretty huge. Clocking in at 22 gigs. I know that's not like modern day AAA size, which can be like anywhere from 50 to 100 gigs. But, for a lower budget Euro title, it's pretty sizable.
Well, it's 22 gigs download, and then it says you should have 44 gigs or something like that open.
Yeah, something like that. It's a big game. It's definitely one of the biggest we've ever featured.
Which makes sense. The graphics are pretty good. There's a lot of voice and stuff, but it might have been able to be made smaller with some programming wizardry.
Yeah, it's not so much the size. It's just, the amount of memory it takes. Like, I could never run this all that good when I had my browser open, for example. And that brings us full circle to Pettyfan here, who was having some connection problems because he is playing the game and streaming the broadcast at the same time.
Yep, that'll do it.
So, like I said, if the footage suddenly cuts out for those who are watching the video version of this review, there's your answer. And yeah, that obviously feeds into the larger review here. Because, you're going to need some pretty beefy specs to play this game. Not going to lie. It's like, I suppose that's neither necessarily good or bad. It is what it is.
Yeah, I did not get to play this game nearly as much as I wanted to because it was making my computer whine something fierce, and I don't like it when the fans start going really nuts.
Yeah.
That and the fact that I'm really terrible at first-person games, which is what this is.
Yeah.
So I didn't get very far.
Well, the other thing, it's like I only got about 3.5 hours in, but I had seen enough to formulate opinions about the game. It's like we don't have a we must finish the game policy here because, let's face it, shit just wouldn't get done because, we have 2 games to review per week on average. Sometimes there's 1, sometimes, like next week there's going to be 3. More on that after we're done with this stuff here. But, it's like, and like if we were full time on this, sure, maybe we would actually complete games and stuff. But, given that this is, not necessarily a hobby, but, it's kind of part-time work for most of us. Anyway, it's like, we kind of play the game to get our impressions, and then we review things. Now, that being said, I know my own personal opinions line up pretty well with the zero punctuation review of this game, which wasn't the nicest in the universe, to say it lightly, as you'd expect from that publication. But anyway, yeah. So Get Even, for those who can't see the footage, is a combination of things, actually, if I'm thinking about it. And that's kind of one of the big problems, because this isn't like, this game is actually kind of 3 genres in one. Like, it's a first-person shooter, it's a psychological horror game, and it's a stealth game, all wrapped up in one. And I think I can sum this up in a sentence. It's a jack of all trades and a master of none. Like, I can't say it did anything overly shitty or anything like that, but I can't say I was ever impressed with any of the mechanics in the game.
Yeah, it has some decent ideas. It seems to play okay, but it's not really it's not bad, but it's certainly not as good as it probably could have been if it focused more on any one of the individual things. And I know we talked to the developer, they were trying to do a lot of things, and they pretty much did all of them serviceably, but not spectacularly.
Well, actually, we talked to the publisher on this
Publisher, sorry.
Yeah, there is a vast difference.
I'm sorry, I'm bad at keeping track of whether the people we talk to are the developer or the publisher.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm here. Well, one of the reasons. It's like, I keep track of these things. Anyway, yeah, it's like...
I'm a very feely reviewer, so...
Well, yeah, I was about to say, so this gets into one of those ineffable, subjective aspects of video game that we call game feel. It's kind of hard to define in the abstract, but at its basic level, it's, well, as the name entails, how a game feels. And yeah, there's a lot of mediocre game feel going on here. Like, the gunplay is pretty bog standard. Like, really the only interesting idea this game has at all is the corner gun. You know, it's like, mainly because it's not the kind of equipment you see too often, although it could show up in other FPSs. Like, I'm not familiar with a lot of Tom Clancy stuff. Like, a corner gun is definitely the kind of thing you experience there.
And what it is it's an attachment for a gun where that lets you put the gun around a corner and pull the trigger around the corner, and also the thing has a camera on it that connects to a screen so you can see what you're shooting at.
Yeah, well, it's actually a specially designed gun that you can actually fold it.
Yeah, the game presents it as some sort of very advanced tech, when, I'll be honest, it's not, at least not in terms of the real world, because corner guns exist.
I guess the screen and the ability to fold really easily to change the angle is somewhat novel, or newer at least. But they've been designing guns to shoot around corners with varying degrees of success since like World War I. So
yeah, it's like, and modern corner guns have existed for at least half a decade, possibly even more. So, you know, on that level, the kit isn't particularly spectacular. It's just, this is presented as very, so advanced that your character has to do a stealth job to, well, if you want to get the kit. And I suppose that flows into character, and you play. Your avatar actually has a character and a personality and a name and a backstory and all that. You are playing.
They talk to themselves a lot.
Yes, of course. I guess that's justified in the fact that he's quite mental, possibly. He is locked up in an insane asylum, after all. Of course, this being a video game, this insane asylum and the whole setup isn't what it seems to be, and everything could be fake, yada yada yada. We've done this dance before. Anyway, yeah, your character is named Coal Black. That's not a joke. They actually named him Coal Black.
That sounds like a pseudonym. Maybe it is. You never know. You're crazy.
Yeah, I'm like, well, whoever named him that was definitely insane, and just needs a punch to the face. And you're basically playing as Jason Statham. Like, it's like we were kind of alluding to that in the interview, but he sounds like a fucking transporter, a low rent transporter, mind you, but still, you can see what they were angling for in terms of voice range.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyway, getting back to tech, I think Petty Fan is showing. Well, he's actually reading something right now, but he's got out the actual most advanced bit of tech here, and that's the smartphone. Because, not necessarily a novel idea, but in order to help with the immersion, all of the HUD stuff it takes place on the smartphone.
And this includes stuff like automatic evidence detection and objective management and a bunch of other stuff.
Also map and whatnot.
Yes, a map that I believe is created by detecting your environment.
No, the map's automatically there.
No, I mean it's not in universe. It's made by detecting the environment rather than being like something you downloaded from somewhere.
Right. It's connected to the GPS device. Oh. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it's got magic functionality like the scanning tool. I mentioned this in the interview. The scanning tool was a nice idea, but it's too finicky for its own good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now,
my weird thing is because I was progressing so slowly in the tutorial or something, the prompt to scan for evidence came up way before I was anywhere near the evidence I was supposed to be scanning.
Curious. Yeah, but how it works is when there's scannable evidence, be it an item or a person or what have you, a set of green lights will light up. And your goal is when you get 4, you should be within range of the scannable item. It's just you have to get it at just the right angle, or else it's not going to scan right. And it's going to be especially annoying when you're dealing with moving objects like people.
Yeah, you have to almost perfectly match up the brackets before it'll let you actually scan the thing.
Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of the stealth gameplay, so that's another thing. This game really wants to push you into the stealth direction.
Oh yes.
For the usual reasons of there is not really a benefit to fighting, and stealth is,
well, in
generally.
In this game, it's actually framed like the main combat missions are episodes in your mind. Like you go mine diving, like Inception or something, and shooting enemies is doing damage to your brain.
Yeah, that's no fun.
And
it's corrupting.
Yeah, it's basically so it's basically tied to the good ending and the bad ending of the game.
I'm guessing that shooting up your own brain gives you a bad ending.
Yeah, more or less, yes.
Yeah, you're encouraged to not kill them, but there are times that's kind of unavoidable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm like this, and the stealth is pretty standard. Like, it's not terrible. It's not all that interesting either. And I'm like, I'll be honest, I about stopped the game there because I don't like. It's not exactly for stealth, but if you're going for it's pretty much in storyline terms forcing you into stealth.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see. In terms of graphics, they're a bit of a mixed bag, I suppose. That is to say, the game looks fairly good by modern standards. But I mean, as you can see on the footage here, the environments, it being are very, very drab.
Mhm.
I don't mean like spooky or anything. It's just you're gonna get bored with them, or at least like the endless fucking corridors here. Like when you start mine diving, things get better because it actually varies up the environments. But yeah, it's like get used to a lot of rundown buildings.
Yeah.
It's easier to program in obstacles when the building is run down. You can't go that way because the ceiling collapsed.
Well, it's also for atmosphere. It's just, here's the thing. Like, this game's sort of going for a horror vibe, but not really.
Doesn't go all the way.
No, keep in mind it's more a psychological thriller than any sort of real horror game. Although it's definitely borrowing some of the tricks. I couldn't say that there's actual like jump scares, or if there are, like Petty Fan encountered the mental patient who free and one shot to the head and he's no longer a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Unless you miss and you have to shoot again.
So that's kind of up to the individual player now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The point is, problems like that are just a bullet away from a solution. And this is in stark contrast to, say, games like Amnesia or Cornerium, or any like survival horror game where you typically don't have weapons. Like, or if you can even go back to like Resident Evil or Silent Hill, where the combat is intentionally shitty, to to enhance the survival part of the survival horror. Like, you're not. It's like you don't necessarily have the same constraints here.
Also, for those of you who are looking at the stream now, this is basically the corner gun that they're showing, the like blueprints for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Like, and another thing that just never clicked with me is, well, the story. And I kind of agreed with Yahtzee in that I really didn't give a shit about anything that was going on here. Like, Cole is just not a very relatable character, especially since you don't really have any bearings on what's real and what's not.
Indeed.
I mean, maybe that clears up later on, but in the stuff I played, I mean, he seems like a good guy, maybe, but maybe not.
Though he did fuck up severely at the beginning of the game.
Yeah, I'm like, hell,
and may or may not be dead.
Yeah, it's like this could all be afterlife bullshit. Like, and as I understand it, like the whole game doesn't center around him. Like, apparently, like 2/3 within, you switch to another character.
Yeah, the story's not necessarily.
Yeah, it's
the
like,
story's not necessarily. Sorry.
You go.
The story's not necessarily specifically about him, but it seems to focus more on other people than just him. That's all I got to say about that.
Indeed. Now, the sound. Now, the sound design is quite excellent. Indeed, if you have 3D sound capabilities, this game will take advantage of that. Like
7.1 because for some reason a subwoofer is a 0.1.
It's because it's not a full speaker.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah, it's like where I live. Surround sound just isn't a thing that's gonna happen. It's like wake up the neighbors kind of deal.
Yep. Surround sound is for people who own their own houses.
Well, even then, it's like even if you have your own house, that can still get into trouble with the neighbors.
Yeah.
Sound laws, noise pollution laws are a thing.
True.
It's like yeah, it's like
I guess
believe
are people who have bigger houses or who live in rural or more rural areas.
yeah, it depends on your location, but like an apartment. I remember the 5.1 surround system giving problems. Ugh. Anyway, yeah, so 3D sound is there to enhance the experience. Like, um, probably best with surround sound headphones. I don't think anyone here has those.
I
Like,
do, but I didn't have a chance to test it out.
hmm, like unfortunate,
Such is life.
but yeah, but it's going to do the surround. If you're familiar with 360 degree sound, it's going to come from like the left or the back left or, um, you know, different directions. You know, and I think like this game really just should have embraced its nature and gone like full horror
Hmm.
or full psychological horror. That
Or a psychological thriller.
yeah, it's like this third thing just never clicked
Yeah, like
like
if
they
this
had hoped.
was like just a full-on action game where
Yeah,
you didn't have to worry about stealth, just go through guns blazing.
yeah. I'm like, and the developer of the Farm 51 sort of have a pedigree in this field because it's made by some of the people who made the Painkiller game, um, but as mentioned in the interview, Painkiller and Get Even Here are two wildly different styles of gameplay, and I'm not like so. Their pedigree really wouldn't and didn't help them in this arena. It's like if they were making a high octane, um, you know, 1990s throwback kind of FPS, that'd do. But something as quote unquote cerebral, read methodical, read slow as this, no, no. This is the polar opposite of what Painkiller was. Let's see.
But yeah, if this was like
Price.
Painkiller, this would be freaking great.
Well, yeah, Painkiller was great. This is not. I think it's fair to say. It's not bad, but I
It's for a
can't say
different
it's all.
kind of person than us.
Yeah, like I said, I can't go more than This is a perfectly decent average game, um, and it will last you a bit of time. Like it's a 10 to 12 hour game, and its price
Probably
is
slightly repeatable.
yeah. I'm like, and
I
well,
think I think Dimitri said there were multiple endings.
well, yeah, there are multiple endings. Like I said, it's tied to your, the actions have consequences tagline.
Hmm.
And anyway, so the price. This game will run you $30 normally, and there is an OST. I'm like, I'll be honest, this is one of those games where I'm having trouble remembering the soundtrack. Because, well, guess what? It's going to be it's very ambient stuff as you'd expect.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's more about the dialogue and the sound of what's going on than it is about the music usually.
It's like couldn't really recommend the soundtrack, and there is an edition that includes both. Shockingly, like, um, yes, the game clocks in at $30, um, which is a fair enough price for, I guess, a single A title or what have you. It's it's larger. It has more production values. There's more going on here than the typical indie game we review. And it's also um, it's also got a physical edition in Europe, I believe, because I think we mentioned with last week's pro cycling review, uh, getting boxed editions of video games, PC games, is still a thing in Europe.
Oh, I
Like,
literally just got the corner gun.
No, I'm like, I guess we can showcase some of that here.
I'll try, unless the
Ooh,
game
that's-
dies on me.
Ooh, this is what we're kind of talking about. It like
Yeah, frame
Yeah,
rate.
when I was turning this game on, my computer froze for like 5 minutes or almost froze. Like my mouse was still moving around, but nothing was responding while it like
yeah,
drained the way through booting up.
yeah, that's another thing. There are significant load times.
Mm-hmm.
See, so this is how the corner gun works.
Yeah, you just use, if you're using a controller, you use the shoulder buttons to go left or right.
Yeah, and if you're using a keyboard and mouse, Q and E
Mhm.
or will be your default keys. You can switch them.
Yeah, this game does at least have control mapping.
Yes, yes. The PC options are fairly standard. Like, not too, from what I remember, not too intricate, but not lazy like some other games I could think of. Like anything that was just like outright ported from console comes to mind.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm like the corner gun's a bit of a nifty idea, but it's not as amazing as the game makes it out to be. Like, ooh,
Yeah.
look, you can turn a corner, like the gun says.
I mean, and I think maybe some of the Tom Clancy games have done this before, but most, like Call of Duty hasn't used a corner gun, I don't think, so.
Yeah,
You
I'm
know who
like,
else doesn't? You know who else doesn't need to worry about corners? Joanna Dark.
right.
Because
You're
that
not
gets
wrong.
That's a random thing to bring up. I mean, shit,
just
BJ.
thinking I'm just
BJ
thinking about other guns that don't care about corners.
Yeah, BJ Blazkowicz doesn't have to worry about corners.
Uh-huh.
Like, or Doom Guy or Gordon Freeman.
Doom Guy fucking just destroys the corners. He doesn't care.
Pretty much, he just cares about rip and tearing.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Sorry, my FPS references are going to be weird because it's not my genre.
Like, it's not so much weird as it is random.
Wasn't it a big deal when Perfect Dark first came out that you had a gun that shoots through walls?
Yes, actually. Fucking hated that gun.
Well, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah, I know what you were talking about. It's just not quite the same thing. Like, that one had a bit more bullshit factor to it, considering, it could shoot through walls.
Right.
Believe me, I hated that thing in multiplayer. Like,
I didn't say it was well balanced.
no, it's just, yeah, and here Petty Fan is in the first mental sequence, and thus, I suppose we can go on a bit longer here to showcase, the actual gunplay or stealth, because this is where it really kicks in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the corner gun, when you get the corner gun, is the first time you really need to use a gun. You have guns before that, but...
It's also worth noting that you have limited ammo, so if you run out, then, you're pretty much forced to do the stealth thing.
You can easily just run through here and survive. That's what I did to try to avoid killing people.
There isn't, yeah, and it's also worth noting that this isn't a cover game, so to speak. Like, you're not going to auto stick to chest high walls. You're going to have
kind of stay behind a wall, but not really.
Uh-huh.
I don't know, I would say thankfully.
Yeah.
Chest high walls are a pain in the butt.
On the other hand, it does have that other modern convention, regenerating health.
Mm-hmm.
So, for the med pack sets, that's probably going to upset you. Like, I don't know. It's like I never had a problem with regenerating health because, the games that use it tended to take that into account. You know, in fact, that was kind of one of the big problems with BioShock Infinite. Uh, it was trying to marry the two, regenerating health and medkit styles, and it didn't work out all that well. And Halo shields. Yeah, you got to wait a bit. So this upcoming section will show off the stealth, and I think we'll wrap the review up here. Just this elevator ride is a bit long, probably hiding some load times.
Yeah, hiding a lot of load times.
Yeah, so how the stealth works here. If you played Metal Solid, think that, like, you can see the guards and their cones, their field of vision, and their alert status. Like I said, it's not, in terms of stealth mechanics, it's not breaking any molds here. I don't think it was setting up to do that.
Yeah, and if I really wanted to, I could just go end all these fools.
Right. But the game emphasizes that you shouldn't do that. But if you want to, you can.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's another mechanic in this game where you can, like, in the dream things, like, make stuff appear out of thin air.
Right. Yeah, it's also, there's not that much of a penalty for getting caught. Like, you'll alert the guards, but I think this is what we were talking about versus something like Splinter Cell. Like, when you blow a stealth thing, or like Metal Gear Solid, like, additional guards don't show up, at least not at this stage. Maybe later on, but it's it's lenient in that regard. So I think we'll wrap it up here.
Yeah.
Because I'm just about out of things to say about the game.
Yeah.
I think overall, I would recommend. I don't know. I don't even think it's that because it has a lot of stuff into it, so that kind of justifies the price, I guess. But it seems like it's a decent enough game to try, but it's not like a must-have.
Mm-hmm. Like, I'd honestly say wait for the summer sale, or winter sale rather. Yeah, summer sale.
I'm sticking with like a solid 5 out of 10 average game. It's not doing anything wrong, but it's not doing anything particularly right.
It's got some cool ideas, but it doesn't really explore most of them that fully.
Yeah, I'd like them to take, like, the corner gun stuff and maybe put that into more of an action-oriented game instead of this.
My big warning
is the cover creation stuff is kind of cool, but
my big warning is going to come from the fact that this game's specifications are quite high, and you may not be able to either run the game or I'll read out the minimum system requirements. Windows 7.
For one thing, don't buy it unless you have like over 40 gigs free.
Well, it's 40 gigs available space. It's DirectX compatible. The processor is an Intel CPU Core i5, running at 3.3 gigahertz.
Is this recommended or minimum that you're reading?
This is the minimum.
Yeah.
Like memory, 8 gigs of RAM, graphics, and NVIDIA GPU GeForce GTX 660 or an AMD Radeon HD 7870. Like, it's not the latest tech. Yeah. Like, for example, it's recommending an Intel i5. For its minimum. For its
Does it say which i5?
Yeah, it's an
The
i5.
2000. Yeah, so that's
Yeah.
like a second generation i5.
Yeah.
So it's kind
Whereas,
of old, but
yeah, well, I'll note it's recommended is an i7 3770.
yeah, and that's still only the third generation. That's still kind of old. Like when people just say i7, they need to see the numbers after it.
Yeah, I
'Cause
know, I
an
know.
i7 3000 is shit compared to an i5 5000.
Right. It's not the highest specs, but they're still fairly high. You know,
And
especially.
it's mostly because of a poor optimization job.
Yeah, it's like I could like looking at the game itself, like its actual graphics and art direction and all that. I can't see anything here that's really pushing, graphical fidelity. Like,
Like honestly, this is one of those, if you have a PS4, Xbox One and don't mind playing FPSs with a controller, maybe see about picking it up on that.
yeah,
But aside from that, if you really want to play this on PC, unless you have a beast of a computer, I would suggest staying away.
indeed. Right. So I think that'll about do it for Get Even here. Be sure to tune in about a half an hour from now, where we cover our second game of the week in Aztez. Now, and until then, I wish you good gaming.